What would you think if you were told that the deepest wounds we carry often dictate the partners we choose, leading us down paths of predictable heartache? Many find themselves trapped in a cyclical pattern, drawn to individuals who, despite their charm or initial allure, ultimately replicate the very pain they seek to escape. It's a cruel irony of the human psyche, a gravitational pull towards the familiar, even when the familiar is harmful. This isn't merely bad luck or poor judgment. It's a profound echo of unresolved past traumas, a shadow dance where the unhealed parts of ourselves seek recognition and, perhaps, a chance to finally heal through repetition. Yet, more often than not, this unconscious quest leads only to further wounding, reinforcing the belief that certain patterns of suffering are inevitable. Consider the story of Alara, a woman whose life, from an outsider's perspective, was a tapestry woven with threads of quiet ambition and reserved elegance. Her artistic talent blossomed early, her canvases a vibrant testament to an inner world rarely exposed. Yet, beneath the veneer of composure lay a silent ache, a wound inflicted in childhood. Her father, a man of mercurial temperament, was prone to sudden, cutting remarks and equally sudden, effusive praise. His love felt conditional, a prize to be earned through perpetual striving and the suppression of her own needs. Alara, as a child, learned to anticipate his moods, to become invisible when storms brewed, and to perform diligently for fleeting moments of approval. This early conditioning etched itself onto her developing psyche, forging a silent vow. She would never again be vulnerable to such unpredictable affection. Yet, the paradox of her adult life was that she invariably found herself drawn to men who mirrored her father's patterns. There was Liam, a brilliant architect whose passion for his work consumed him, leaving little emotional space for Alara. His intellectual intensity was captivating, initially. He spoke of grand visions and abstract concepts with an almost magnetic fervor. Alara, with her innate desire to nurture and support, found herself drawn into his orbit, believing she could be the calm center to his tempestuous genius. Their early conversations were exhilarating, filled with intellectual sparring that stimulated her mind. She admired his ambition, his unwavering focus, seeing in it a strength she believed she lacked. But as the initial glow faded, a familiar chill began to creep in. Liam's work always came first. His phone calls would interrupt intimate dinners, his late nights at the office stretched into early mornings, and his emotional availability became as elusive as mist. When Alara would tentatively express her desire for more connection, for shared vulnerability, he would dismiss her concerns with a wave of his hand, or worse, with a patronizing chuckle. "You're being overly sensitive, Alara," he'd say, his voice laced with an exasperated weariness. "Can't you see I'm building something here? Something significant." The words stung, echoing the dismissals of her childhood. A part of her recoiled, recognizing the pattern, but another part, the one still yearning for conditional love, doubled down. She worked harder to please him, to anticipate his needs, to make herself indispensable, hoping that if she simply demonstrated enough unwavering support, his affection would finally become constant, unconditional. She started meticulously curating their home, ensuring every detail was perfect for his return, cooking his favorite meals even when she was exhausted, and suppressing her own creative urges to make more time for his demanding schedule. "Perhaps if I just prove myself worthy," she would whisper to the silent corners of her mind, "he will finally see me, truly see me." This internal dialogue, a whisper of desperation, propelled her further into the familiar dance of self-abandonment. She found herself walking on eggshells, monitoring his tone of voice, deciphering the slightest shift in his demeanor, all to avoid triggering the invisible storm she remembered from her past. The cracks, however, widened. One evening, after weeks of canceled plans and hurried goodbyes, Alara sat alone in their meticulously arranged living room, a half-finished canvas gathering dust in her studio. Liam had called, yet again, to say he would be working through the night. A profound wave of loneliness washed over her, heavier and more suffocating than usual. She looked at her reflection in the darkened window, a stranger staring back, her eyes holding a silent plea. "Is this all there is?" she wondered, the question a hesitant tremor in her soul. The memory of her father's dismissive gaze, the feeling of being unseen, surged forward, potent and visceral. It was a moment of stark, painful clarity. The man she had chosen, the dynamic she had created, was not a deviation but an almost perfect replica of the emotional landscape of her childhood. The external circumstances were different, but the internal experience of yearning for an elusive, conditional love was identical. The emotional climax arrived not in a grand confrontation, but in that quiet, solitary moment of recognition, a realization that the wound, unaddressed, had orchestrated her choices, pulling her towards the familiar ache rather than true healing. This wasn't about Liam's character flaws, but about her own unconscious script, playing out relentlessly. The archetypal pattern emerging from Alara's narrative is that of the wounded healer subtly trapped within the perfectionist shadow. Her childhood experiences with conditional love shaped an ego that believed worthiness was contingent upon flawless performance and self-effacement. This created a profound inner conflict, a yearning for deep connection battling against a primal fear of rejection and abandonment. The shadow aspects of this archetype manifest as a tendency to project her unfulfilled needs onto others, seeking to fix or earn love from partners who mirror her initial caregiver's emotional unavailability. The theme here is the compulsion to repeat, a Freudian concept that suggests individuals unconsciously reenact past traumas in an attempt to master them, often with destructive results. To break free from this insidious cycle, you must first acknowledge the unseen threads that bind you. Recognize that the partners you choose are often unwitting mirrors reflecting the unaddressed wounds within your own psyche. Begin to explore your own childhood narratives, not with judgment, but with curiosity. What emotional patterns were established in your formative years? What unspoken rules did you internalize about love and worthiness? Carl Jung's concept of the shadow is crucial here. The hidden, disowned parts of ourselves, our insecurities, our unmet needs, our suppressed desires. When these remain in the shadow, they often find expression through our relationships, as we project them onto others or seek out partners who embody them. You are not destined to repeat the past. You possess the agency to rewrite your narrative. Begin by cultivating a fierce self-compassion, understanding that the patterns you've engaged in were not failures of character, but rather valiant, if misguided, attempts to heal. Engage in shadow work. Bravely confront the parts of yourself you have denied or suppressed. This might involve journaling about your earliest memories of love and rejection, seeking therapy to process past traumas, or simply allowing yourself to feel the uncomfortable emotions you've long avoided. The path to breaking these cycles begins with profound self-awareness and the courage to look inward, to truly see the wound that keeps choosing. The power to choose differently, to choose healing, resides within you. Have you ever noticed how the very qualities that initially draw you to someone, the magnetic allure that feels like destiny, are often the precise facets of your own unacknowledged self? This isn't coincidence. It's the profound, often bewildering, dance of projection, where the unconscious mind seeks its own reflection in the external world. We are, in essence, drawn to the archetypes we carry within, particularly those aspects of ourselves that remain unintegrated or disowned. The second insidious layer of the wound that keeps choosing the same love lies precisely in this act of projecting our unfulfilled desires, our shadowed potential, or our unhealed wounds onto another, mistakenly believing that their presence will complete us or rectify past deficits. It's a powerful illusion, for the truth is, what we seek outside ourselves must first be found within. Consider the profound insight offered by Carl Jung, who posited, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." This statement, seemingly simple, holds a universe of psychological depth when applied to the repetitive nature of our romantic choices. Jung believed that the qualities we admire most deeply in others, as well as those we find most frustrating or repellent, are often reflections of our own hidden or suppressed attributes. When Alara found herself repeatedly drawn to emotionally unavailable partners, like Liam, she was not merely encountering a string of unfortunate coincidences. Instead, she was encountering a recurring externalization of her own internal landscape. Her deep-seated need for unconditional love, a void left by her father's conditional affection, was projected onto these men. She unconsciously sought partners who, by their very unavailability, provided a familiar emotional terrain, a chance to reenact the original trauma in a desperate attempt to achieve a different, more favorable outcome. The core of this phenomenon is rooted in the concept of the anima and animus, Jung's archetypes of the unconscious feminine and masculine principles within each individual, regardless of their biological sex. For Alara, the archetypal masculine principle, animus, influenced by her early experiences, was perhaps underdeveloped or wounded. Her internal animus might have been associated with distant authority, intellectual prowess without emotional warmth, or even a demanding, critical inner voice. When she encountered men who embodied these externalized aspects, a powerful, unconscious pull occurred. She was not consciously seeking an emotionally distant partner. Rather, her psyche, in its profound wisdom, was presenting her with a mirror, a chance to integrate and heal the fragmented masculine within herself. Liam's intellectual brilliance, his focused ambition, resonated with a part of Alara that valued achievement and mental acuity, perhaps a trait she admired but felt she couldn't fully embody herself without feeling selfish or demanding. Yet, his emotional aloofness triggered the familiar wound of being unseen, unprioritized. This was the crux of the projection. She was drawn to what she thought she wanted, a strong, focused partner, while simultaneously re-experiencing what she feared, emotional neglect. This dynamic is beautifully illustrated in the intricate dance of relationships governed by ego projection. We often project our idealized self onto our partner, believing they embody all the qualities we aspire to. For Alara, Liam initially represented the unwavering ambition and intellectual independence she yearned for but had suppressed in herself due to her conditioning to be compliant and nurturing. She saw in him a strength she felt was lacking in her own ability to prioritize her artistic pursuits over the demands of others. Simultaneously, she also projected her shadow onto him, the fear of being abandoned, the need for external validation, and the belief that love had to be earned. When Liam inevitably failed to meet these unconscious projections, not because he was flawed, but because no single individual can fulfill another's entire internal landscape, Alara experienced not just disappointment, but a profound disillusionment that felt like a personal failure. Her internal dialogue would begin, "If only I were more, fill in the blank, supportive, understanding, less needy, then he would truly love me." This internal narrative, a cruel echo of her childhood, reinforced the belief that her worth was conditional. The critical turning point in breaking this cycle of projection comes with the arduous, yet profoundly liberating, journey of individuation. Jung defined individuation as the process by which an individual becomes a whole, indivisible unity, integrating conscious and unconscious elements of the psyche. For Alara, this meant moving beyond the external focus of her relationships and turning her gaze inward. It required her to reclaim her projected qualities, her own ambition, her desire for emotional intimacy, and her inherent worthiness, and integrate them into her conscious self. It meant recognizing that Liam's unavailability was not a judgment on her worth, but a reflection of his own internal landscape, and crucially, a catalyst for her to confront her own unaddressed needs and fears. The external mirror, once a source of pain, became a powerful tool for self-discovery. This stage of healing demands a profound act of self-responsibility. It's about ceasing to blame the other for the patterns that emerge and instead asking, what in me is seeking this familiar dynamic? What unacknowledged part of myself am I trying to see or heal through this relationship? The archetypal character here is often the codependent heroine or the echo-narcissus, endlessly reflecting others' needs and desires while their own authentic voice remains unheard. The theme is the tyranny of the unconscious, where unexamined psychological complexes dictate our choices. To liberate yourself, you must engage in the sacred act of self-reparenting. This means becoming the loving, attuned caregiver you may not have had. It involves setting firm boundaries with yourself and others, honoring your own needs and desires, and actively working to integrate your shadow aspects. This is not about becoming self-centered, but about becoming self-referenced. Begin by consciously identifying the qualities you consistently seek in others. Are these qualities you already possess but have suppressed? Are they needs that you must learn to meet for yourself? Reflect on the patterns in your past relationships. What were the recurring themes, the similar emotional landscapes? This requires immense courage, for it means confronting the uncomfortable truth that you have, in some ways, been a co-creator of your own suffering. But in this realization lies immense power. The power to choose differently, to consciously attract and cultivate relationships that genuinely support your growth and well-being, rather than simply reiterating old wounds. The path forward is not about finding the perfect partner, but about becoming the whole, integrated individual who can truly experience and reciprocate authentic love. Has it ever struck you that the ultimate freedom from repetitive pain in relationships isn't found in choosing a different partner, but in radically transforming the internal landscape that chooses them? This is the profound truth of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming a fully integrated, authentic self. The wound that keeps choosing the same love finds its final, most potent resolution not in external change, but in the deep, arduous, and ultimately liberating work of healing within, cultivating a self-worth so robust it renders external validation superfluous. Consider the transformative wisdom of Carl Jung, a pioneer in humanistic psychology, who emphasized the concept of unconditional positive regard and the importance of an individual's actualizing tendency. Rogers believed that every person possesses an inherent drive towards self-actualization, a natural inclination to grow, heal, and fulfill their potential, provided they exist in an environment of genuine acceptance and empathy. The wound, in this light, is not a permanent scar but a blockage to this actualizing tendency, a result of early conditional love or psychological invalidation. To truly break the cycle, Alara, and indeed anyone caught in similar patterns, must cultivate this unconditional positive regard for herself, becoming her own primary source of validation and acceptance. This means moving beyond the historical programming that dictated her worth was dependent on external approval, and instead, building an unshakable foundation of intrinsic self-worth. The final, most challenging aspect of breaking free from the repetitive relationship pattern lies in the courageous act of fully embracing your own inherent value, irrespective of how others perceive or treat you. For Alara, this journey began not with a grand romantic gesture, but with a deliberate, almost defiant, return to her art. Her canvases had gathered dust for years, casualties of her relentless pursuit of external validation. Now, she picked up her brushes, not to impress Liam or anyone else, but for the sheer, unadulterated joy of creation. She painted with a fervor she hadn't felt since childhood, allowing her emotions to spill onto the canvas, unedited and raw. There was a particular series of paintings, dark and swirling at first, reflecting the confusion and pain she had carried. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, light began to seep into her palette, vibrant hues. Bold strokes, figures emerging from the shadows, eyes gleaming with an inner fire. This artistic resurgence became her sanctuary, a space where she could explore her internal world without judgment, where her intrinsic worth was self-evident in the act of creation itself. This was her active engagement in shadow work, not as an intellectual exercise, but as a living, breathing process. She began to journal, exploring the deepest corners of her past, confronting the raw memories of conditional love, the fear of abandonment, and the shame she had internalized. She recalled a particularly poignant memory from her childhood. Her father, dismissing a drawing she had proudly presented, his words echoing, "It's messy, Alara. Not quite what I'd expect." The sting of that memory, so long suppressed, now surfaced, bringing with it a torrent of tears. But this time, instead of collapsing into despair, she held that young Alara, whispering words of comfort and acceptance, acknowledging the validity of her messy, authentic self. This was the nascent stage of self-reparenting, actively giving herself the unconditional love she had always sought externally. Her journey wasn't linear. There were days when the old anxieties crept back, days when the lure of familiar, though harmful, patterns felt almost irresistible. She'd find herself scrolling through old messages, wondering if Liam might reach out, feeling a faint pang of the old yearning. But now, armed with a growing self-awareness, she recognized these urges as echoes of the wound, not as genuine desires. Instead of acting on them, she would sit with the discomfort, allowing it to pass, much like a stoic observing a passing storm. Marcus Aurelius's wisdom, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength," became a quiet mantra. She redirected her energy, channeling it into her art, into long, contemplative walks in nature, into reading works of philosophy and psychology that further illuminated her path. She joined a women's art collective, finding genuine connection and validation in a community that celebrated authenticity and vulnerability. For the first time, she experienced relationships built on mutual respect and shared growth, rather than unconscious repetition. The true climax arrived not in a dramatic confrontation with a past partner, but in a profound, quiet moment of internal liberation. One morning, as she stood before a finished painting, a self-portrait rendered with stark honesty and luminous self-acceptance, she realized something profound. The ache was gone. The incessant yearning for external validation, the subtle anxiety about being enough, had dissipated. She was simply being, authentically and unapologetically herself. This wasn't about erasing the past, but about integrating it, understanding that the wound had been a powerful teacher, guiding her towards her own inherent wholeness. The relationships she now sought were no longer a desperate search for completion, but an expansion of the joy and richness she had cultivated within herself. She had transformed the internalized narrative from, "I must earn love," to, "I am love." The character archetype Alara embodies in her transformation is the self-actualized sovereign, a woman who has reclaimed her inner authority and reigns supreme over her own emotional kingdom. The pervasive theme here is healing trauma through conscious self-integration, moving beyond the victim narrative to become the architect of one's own well-being. The solutions for those who recognize themselves in Alara's journey are multifaceted and deeply personal. You are not defined by the wounds you carry, but by the courage with which you choose to heal them. Start by cultivating radical self-compassion, forgiving yourself for the unconscious choices you've made, understanding they were born of a primal need for love and safety. Engage in practices that anchor you in your own worth. Meditation to quiet the external noise and connect with your inner wisdom. Mindful movement like yoga or walking to embody your strength. Creative expression to unleash your authentic voice, and journaling to process your emotions. It's time to release the need for external validation, to understand that your worth is not a currency to be earned from another, but an intrinsic truth of your being. Embrace the power of stillness, for it is in the quiet moments that profound insights arise. Redirect the energy you once spent chasing elusive affection towards nourishing your own soul, pursuing passions, and building a life that reflects your truest desires. When you become full within yourself, relationships become a joyous addition, not a desperate necessity. The journey of individuation is not about becoming perfect, but about becoming whole. It's about accepting all parts of yourself, the light and the shadow, and recognizing that your inherent value is non-negotiable. You have the power to transform your inner landscape, to break free from the gravitational pull of old wounds, and to choose love that truly nourishes and elevates you. This isn't just a possibility, it's your inherent right. Will you take the courageous step to rewrite your own love story, to claim the sovereignty of your own heart? If you find this resonates with you, if you see yourself in this journey, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment to help our channel feel from you. And if you know someone who needs this video, please send them this video as a necessary share. Thanks for watching. The end.